Так, ну, всем привет. Сегодня у нас круглый стол, посвященный состоянию мобильных игр. Но есть маленький сюрприз, не знаю, знаете вы или нет, он у нас будет происходить на английском. Вот, поэтому, ну, в принципе, слушать на английском достаточно просто. Вот, потом, если нужна будет помощь в вопросах, может быть, просто переводить. То есть можете задавать на русском. Поэтому, собственно, буду переходить на английский. So, hi guys, my name is Artem Bocharov. I do publishing at Game Insight, and we're going to be talking about the current and future state of mobile gaming today. And first, I would like our guests to introduce themselves and to tell what they do at their companies and what the companies do, basically.
Okay, всем привет. My name is Yefim. I'm one of the co-founders of Zeptolab. In the company, I am responsible for technical stuff, so my title is CTO. And I also handle creative aspects and some of the business aspects of the company.
My name is Justin Rapp. I work with AppAnnie out of our Beijing office, and we provide tools for developers to understand how they're monetizing and downloads that they're getting throughout the world, as well as kind of perform competitive intelligence. Our main goal is basically providing developers, publishers, anybody interested in the mobile market with actionable insight. I head our global customer success team, which is responsible for working with our customers and partners to maximize the value they get out of our various products.
Hi everyone, my name is Guillaume. I work for Flurry. I'm based in London. Flurry is well known for the analytics, but we have been building for the past 2 or 3 years now some monetization and user acquisition products through like videos and CPI, etc. I work on I work as publisher manager, so my role is to help publishers grow their revenue through Flurry monetization product mostly. That's it.
All right, so let's talk about the current state of the market, and I think the first question would be, how much money is there in the market, in the mobile gaming market, across platforms, across countries? Maybe this is more of a question to our big data guests.
Yeah, obviously it's a big market, so it's not a surprise, otherwise I think no one would be here today, but yeah, obviously the gaming sector, what we see at Flurry is that the gaming market is like reaching the charts, so yeah, we see a lot of traction from social networks, so photo and video based application, but clearly game is still the leading segment on both iOS and Android. So, and I mean, we all know there was a kind of shift from premium to freemium within our purchase, and it's definitely getting a lot of traction. So, yeah, I mean, it's a huge market, obviously.
Yeah, and without going into specific numbers, I'll take a higher level view. On iOS, we're seeing that United States, Japan, and China are 3 of the largest markets. And then on Google Play, you also see the United States. However, it's in a lower position. Japan and South Korea are really driving the large growth. And like my friend says, it's all from games, mainly, particularly in South Korea. South Korea and Japan. Games are really driving the market, whereas in the United States and some of the Western markets, Western European markets, you see apps outside of the game sector that are monetizing.
Okay, thanks guys, but you're in Russia, we need a number.
We don't provide numbers, but I can tell you Russia is moving up the charts quite well.
Well, can you like estimate this in billions out of your head?
Not with so many people watching, we're on record here. I'm happy to talk outside of the panel. And then address more specific questions.
I to be honest, I don't have any proper figures, an exact figure to share, but the interesting thing is the fact that all these big countries, like, I mean, the US and Canada, and all these really established markets, are they are the biggest, but they are now it's getting slower in terms of like device adoption, because I see a lot of people already have a device, or whatever, it's a tablet or a smartphone. So the interesting part is obviously with countries like Nordics and Eastern Europe and Russia, It's very important in some of the countries, up-and-coming countries, we see a much faster kind of adoption than like really established countries already. So I guess, yeah, that's key focus for companies definitely like AppAnnie or Flurry, whatever it's to drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about relative numbers, I guess. And in terms of relative numbers, how big is the Russian market?
The Russian market, again, without giving specific numbers, I was looking at the figures just before. What I can say about Russia is amazing, is the growth rate. It's really, looking at our estimates, if you look at January 2012 until most recently March 2013, where the numbers are, it's looking at something like a 400% growth rate. Another interesting thing, to go back to the last question, because what I get a lot from friends and potential clients as well as current clients who don't have access to all of our data is what about the relative size? iOS and Google Play and Amazon creeping in, we were talking about this just before, is that when, I think in November, when we published a report, we saw that iOS was monetizing at a rate 4 times higher than Google Play. And with our report that we issued, I believe in February or March, I have to check the exact dates, we saw that it was 2.6. And we're seeing downloads on Google Play devices creeping up. And you can see from a lot of service providers outside of ourselves, so we don't do device measurement, but you can also see, obviously, as you were saying earlier, Gil, that there's a lot higher adoption rate, and Android is taking a very large market share.
Okay. So let's say, I want to talk about money making in mobile games now. And let's say a developer asked for your advice how to make $1 million. So what would be your advice? This could be platforms, genres, maybe any insights.
Well, if I knew, I would do my own application. But I don't think there is, to be honest, any like kind of golden rules on like what to do. I think there was a kind of slight shift from the type of like genre that are being adopted by like consumers from casual gaming to maybe more hardcore and like core, etc. I think while it's a mix, whenever I'm being asked how to like really make revenue, I think it's a mix. The first thing and the key important thing is to create a great game, something that is fun to play for users, that's something that is entertaining, and then they have to obviously consider both the monetization aspect of it and how to drive revenue inside your application, how to drive obviously user acquisition, because there is clearly a kind of discovery like issue in the market because of the number of applications that are being available now. So yeah, I would say that user interface is very important, having a really clear and understanding user interface. Create a game that is fun and entertaining to play as well. It's also very important and very addictive. And then I don't think there is any like golden rules, to be honest.
I'll hand off very quickly because I'm sure that the game maker can say a lot. But for me, it comes down to 2 things. Know your market and know what they want. In South Korea, you're going to focus on Google Play and a different type of game than you are in the United States, the United Kingdom, or Australia, because it's just a different market. And if you create a great experience, a lot of the companies that we work with, if you ask them how they're succeeding, they say, we want to give the people what they want. And that being said, I'm going to stop because we just measure, we don't create.
Okay, yeah, true. I totally agree with the arguments, and I totally agree with the first priority is to create a great game, so that's what you should focus on. And today, on this very competitive market, your bet would probably be to find some niche. Because the competitiveness is growing very high, so you should try to see where you can just create some new things where you can find a fit. And also, I would, from the beginning, I would not, plan for overnight success. I would not plan to make $1 million, overnight with a single title. The things are getting more complex every day. The rate of applications appearing is rising. So you should be ready to create a bunch of games before one of them grows really well. So I think that would be a great strategy to find your niche, to to focus on, on quality and, constantly try to do great games. Maybe your user base will not be that high with the first title, but if you continue to do it and don't turn from this path, during some time you will eventually find the one that will hit to the top of the charts.
Yeah, actually, just add me one thing, and I completely agree. I was earlier discussing with Social Quantum on the success of Megapolis, and they told me that, I mean, it can come across as a surprise for some people in the chart, but actually they've been working on Megapolis like for more than 2 years now, and it was previously an online game, and then it came as a very like Facebook and like mobile game oriented. So I mean, they have a proven track record on that game. They understand really well their audience because they were focusing in Russia. They know how the users react to the game, what they like, what they don't like. They know how to promote updates and things like that. So when they were ready to launch on mobile, then they managed to successfully grow the database. And as you said, it's not a one shot. Like they've been there for quite a long time.
Yeah, yes, that's true. And the same thing happened to Rovio. They created 50-something games before creating Angry Birds. And same for us in Zeptolab.
Same for Jules.
And so for coming back to Zeptolab, so you don't have a hit-driven business model anymore. Are you focusing on building games that are more predictable in terms of revenues?
No, we're trying to experiment. So that's what drives us from the very beginning. Of course, our big advantage is that we have an IP that's popular, that a lot of people love across the world. So this allows us to have some, understanding of what users want, what they like, and how we can expand this IP. But besides that, we are trying to figure out what would be the next thing for us, and we really want to find some new gameplay, some new models, some new things that will be that will be interesting for users.
And do you know about the genres that developers shouldn't do, like never, because it wouldn't work?
Well, I don't think so. I think that there is always an auditory for every genre. You just have to think what kind of a game would be a best fit for this particular platform in this particular period of time. So I think that's a question of it depends on some specifics, but of course there's no single, golden genres that you should go to.
Yeah, but guys from Big Data, do you have genres that are performing just poorly?
As a policy, I try to focus on the positive, and to answer the question in another way, I think if you look over the last 6 months at the variety of titles that have had a lot of success, both in downloads and in revenue, you see games such as Puzzle and Dragons, which in Japan I think everybody in the audience is probably fairly familiar with, is just a totally different kind of game. But it's really, if you look at their core mechanics, it's a combination of gameplay that already existed. It's match 3 with a dungeon, with a collectible card feel, so you can put things together in a new way. Then if you also look at games like Ruzzle, 4 Pictures, 1 Word, the success they had, that's a totally different genre that's just, kind of a word game. And then Angry Birds, obviously somebody who's done very well. Zeptolab just Cut the Rope. Those are, you could argue Cut the Rope and Angry Birds are a similar type of game, but if you look at those 4 examples that I spoke about, Clash of Clans as well, you really do just have a tremendous array of different types of games. So I think that the idea is figuring out not so much what not to do for a genre, but picking a genre and figuring out what to do.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I mean, actually, you took the example I wanted to pick. Yeah, I mean, you have different regions that are obviously. We know that in Asia they are very kind of card or like with the likes of Puzzle and Dragons. They like card games in. I mean, legacy games in like Eastern Europe and Russia or even South America. They like kind of really action-driven and brand-driven titles as well. in the US and maybe Western Europe, it's slightly a mix and a blend of like genre as well. But I think back a few years ago when the first games were released, it was very kind of casual driven with the likes of the Smurf or Angry Birds, and then it became slightly more core games with Clash of Clans and Minecraft, etc. And now I think we see clearly a mix of genre with For Pictures One World is actually a really good one, but with maybe top 11 from Nordair as well. So we have a kind of large range of products that are being really successful. So I think the important and what we see these days is a lot of clones and like same type of products. What's important is to find a niche or a product you really want to develop where you think your team has skills and expertise, and then work on it and propose something that is different for the user that they can find on the market these days and that's going to be attractive. And if you can create a brand or a very iconic character like you did on Zeptolab, or some of the brands did with Angry Birds, I think it's great. But
Yeah, and it's interesting to see. Also, and it's interesting to see how some old game ideas are having a very long life. Like you can go back and remember about the old Palm OS days and how the Match 3 visual version in the early 2000s was popular there. And throughout more than a decade, you see this mechanic appears in Puzzles and Dragons in some form of evolution. So there's still a lot of old ideas of old games that came from from Atari, from the ZX Spectrum, from some very old devices that still can find a new breath, a new life on mobile. But of course, the right strategy would be to find the way this particular idea would work on these devices, how it could use the new the new features of the platform, the touch screen, the accelerometer, and all this stuff. And it's exciting to see how these old ideas can find a new living on the mobile.
Actually, the reason I asked what are the genres are not to make is because this is a very positive point of view. Because if you're doing something that is not going to be bringing you any money and you don't have chances to earn those money, that's a very negative thing. So talking about what's not working is the right way to go. And maybe I'll just try to help you. What about the kid games? How do they perform? Because at gaming side, I review a lot of games and developers who want to make kid games, but I don't believe they're going to be making money.
That's actually well, it's a tricky. I think it's a tricky one because at Flurry we get contacted a lot by developers making kids games, but there is a kind of obviously for the ones developing kids games, they know about that COPPA compliance issue that is there. So it's kind of hard because I think approaching kids game on both monetization, also analytics questions is kind of somehow forbidden. So we. The approach with kid games obviously is very niche, and making revenue with kids games is a tricky one. Obviously, I think it's harder because you have less options than with other genres where you can use a different monetization platform to help you grow your revenue as well. But maybe key paid games, could be really successful actually.
And I'll take a step back because we don't only work with gaming companies. And I'll just share, this is not, backed by data, this is backed on conversations, and I actually worked in education prior to joining AppAnnie. I think that for kids' games, and just if you look at the app as an experience, there's a lot of potential. Growing up, I had books about all kinds of things, sharks and snakes and, math, physics. And I think that the potential that we were just talking about with using new things like the accelerometer, or what does the technology enable? I think we're still figuring that out, and so it would not be surprising to me at all to see a powerhouse emerge that does a collection of apps or educational things that maybe it's not based on in-app purchases, but it's a different model And I don't think that that's something that is not going to happen. I think that it will happen. But it's not necessarily the first thing that comes to light. And if you talk to publishers, in the more traditional sense, 500 years, people that are making books, it's always been something that's for education. And I think that the difficulty that kids games have is kind of crossing that barrier. Whereas if it's not labeled as a kids game, but it's something for kids, then it does have potential. And I think that a lot of parents, particularly, I'm based in Beijing, and in China, I can tell you that there's nothing more important than the child and anything that will contribute to the child's well-being, whether it be educational, happiness. And so I actually do think that for kids' games, if you frame it like that, maybe not. But if you combine it as a kid experience and something that will create this incredible world where they can learn, maybe.
I also think that we should probably talk about more specific things. Like, again, when you're talking about, like, let's say, a puzzle adventure game that can make lots of money, let's say, Cut the Rope, then, of course, you mean that this is a paid game, or a paid game with enough purchases. This is not a free-to-play game. So maybe we should just go back and talk about the numbers. What's the market is going towards to? Is it free-to-play already? Is it going to free-to-play? And where's more money? Is it paid or free-to-play? And then we can go back to the question and think about the kids game for free-to-play. And I think that would be another story.
Well, clearly, I think kids games on a free-to-play basis are like a different type of product. But I mean, we do work, for instance, with the likes of Outfit 7, and they are being really successful with all these Talking Tom and Talking Ginger franchise, and they are like kids-oriented products. So there is a difference between creating a game that looks like a kids title. I mean, what I mean by that is if you take, for instance, Cut the Rope, the icon is actually looks kind of not kids-oriented, but really like kind of a young audience. But actually, because of the game structure and the physics and stuff, it's a much wider audience, and anyone can play Cut the Rope because, or even Angry Birds. Like if you take the Angry Birds character, they look like plushes and kids product. But at the end of the day, if you want to achieve like having 3 stars on all the level, it can be really complicated products. So I think the gameplay inside the game also makes the game in the sense that it definitely appeals to a wider audience. And in terms of like free-to-play versus paid games, I mean, free-to-play is definitely the place to be, I think, and it's also Flurry talking through the monetization and the user acquisition. We clearly see that games, free-to-play titles, are making huge revenue, but in the same time, you have, I mean, the likes of the Rope that are paid games and are highly successful. I don't know if you heard about The Room, which is a kind of iPad games, which is amazing games for more kind of adult audience. But just because the use of the iPad and the graphics, they are so amazing that, I mean, you would pay for it. It's just an absolutely brilliant game. So there is no, I mean, again, it comes back to the first question. I think there is no golden rules. Like if you produce like absolutely fantastic game, but you don't want to push in-app purchase of virtual currency, it can be a paid game and be highly successful. Obviously, the benefit of having a free-to-play title is the discovery, so people will more easily access to the game because it's free, so they are more likely to test it. And we see these days that users can be reluctant to access paid games because they have to pay 79p or 99p. But yeah, again, I think there is no golden rules, but both systems are very successful.
And just to kind of talk ratios a little bit and then kind of go to a little bit more in-depth analysis, we're seeing very similar download numbers in terms of games that are completely free and then games that are free to play. But then if you look at the share of revenue, obviously free is excluded from this and they're making ad revenue. But from game or revenue that's generated within the app, free-to-play is making a vast majority of the market now. And I think that there's a couple of reasons for this. One of which is that the free-to-play model, number one, allows people to kind of get used to a game and see if they want to. One of the things you hear is that it seems a lot like the shareware model of the past where you weren't bound to buy something before getting to play it. It's kind of a demo. The other thing is it allows people to kind of choose their level of engagement. If I'm somebody who's really into a game, then I might spend $50 to $100 on it versus somebody who's, says, oh, I'll pay $5 to $10 for this. You don't have to kind of set a price point that kicks the market out. And then a counterexample is that, not a counterexample, but continuing along lines with the room is look at Minecraft. That's a game that's had tremendous success as a paid game and is not utilizing, a tremendous amount of in-app purchases at all. So I think that, they've also benefited kind of from this cult following where people are making movies about it, and that helps get the word out. And I think with the discovery process, that's one aspect of it. But I think it's not only discovery, because we're talking about 700, 800,000 apps, on both of the major stores now. So being free doesn't guarantee that you'll get discovered. But I think it's also a lot about people want to be able to choose the level of engagement that they have.
Yeah, definitely. Free-to-play is a definite trend. You can see that it's through the last year it's really grown very fast, and I think that this trend will continue to be.
Could you speak up, please?
Okay. Okay, it's much better. So yeah, I think that that free-to-play is a definite trend that's going on in the industry, and it will continue to grow. But I don't think that paid games will go away. I think it will stay at some level. And for some games, for some game mechanics, you just can't create a great freemium game out of some ideas. So I think that for certain kind of games, for example, like Cut the Rope, the paid model is just a better fit. Of course, you can try to find a ways to monetize it with in-apps, and that's what we've done with superpowers and other things inside the game. So, but you just can't, create a great freemium title out of any idea. So yeah, and also there are some advantages in paid titles, like when you launch the App Store, for example, on the iPhone, the first tab will be paid, and when you tell about what's the #1 game on the App Store, you still probably think about the paid games. So that's just about the user interface and how the app stores are working. So yeah, I think that freemium is a definite trend where we all should look like.
Does Zeptolab actually thinking about building, I would say, true free-to-play game, not just paid with in-app purchases? Do you have any plans to do that?
Definitely, yeah. We don't limit ourselves to any model, to any genre, or to any just specific thing. And of course, we don't want to stick with Cut the Rope forever. So we will definitely try ourselves in this field.
But do you think you would have to change the genre? I mean, to do the game in a different genre, not puzzle?
Sure. So I think that there are much more suitable genres for free-to-play than puzzles.
Okay, so now we are actually getting to the point that for free-to-play, there are genres that are not performing well. And this may be obvious for game developers, and I think this should be pretty much obvious for big data guys as well. Because if you look at free-to-play, you wouldn't see many successful puzzle games. You wouldn't see successful arcade games. What's your thoughts on that?
Sorry, you said card game?
I said puzzle game, arcade game.
Oh, yeah, okay. Arcade game, I tend to agree. I mean, puzzle game, obviously, you have the likes, as you mentioned, you have 4 pictures, 1 word, or like kind of level-based titles that, can be considered as like puzzle game in the sense that, you have objective and you have to find a picture.
This is trivia more. Okay.
Yeah, trivia. Yeah. Oh, it's trivia. But yeah, I think you definitely have some genre that are obviously much more suitable for a free-to-play business because it's the nature of the game and you can monetize in very different ways. So, like if you take, well, for instance, I mean, all the building games, type of games like Megapolis, you have much more opportunities there because you can sell different type of items, different types of power-ups, and you can accelerate the building process, etc. So you have the use of different like virtual currency and so I think it's better in that way because obviously if you take a game with only one single currency as well and just the access to some hits and stuff like that, it's kind of much more limited. But definitely like some genre like building games that are more suitable than some others.
And if, with respect to arcade games, not doing well, I think to a certain degree, what we keep in mind is not necessarily the same as how it's classified in the store. If I think correctly, Kabam, Kingdoms of Camelot, that's actually an arcade game. That's and so when you say arcade, I think are we talking about?
Let's say a platformer. A platformer.
Okay.
Like side scroller. When you shoot and you jump.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a little bit different, and that might be something that if it's incredible graphics or something that really requires a upfront investment, then that might be more suitable for a paid, and we may not have gotten there. That's not to say just because we haven't seen it, it's not possible for it to happen.
Well, you have like talking about platform game. I mean, you have the likes of Rayman from Ubisoft. It's kind of I think pretty successful, and it's a platform game. But again, it's a paid game because I think users are paying the brand and they are paying Rayman because they know the character now. It's a kind of very established, like iconic personage that they are now using. But again, I agree. I think for platform game, I would rather maybe go for a paid game because there is no real interest into in-app purchase. I mean, if really you structure the platform game by levels and then you send the different levels, it might be really frustrating for a user. I mean, I would rather pay one fee and access the entire game if I really like it than like paying to like unlock new levels all the time. So yeah, I mean, platform game I think I'm more suitable for a premium one.
And then to go back to the kid games question, I think again you kind of take a larger view. Maybe if you're a developer, maybe you're in the business of looking at this as an application, but if you get 10 million downloads and you're not, advertising because they don't want you to advertise to children, and you're not, pushing in-app purchases because you don't want to run up a bill by getting unsuspecting 5-year-olds, then I think that, look at Rovio. They're selling plush toys. Or Disney, who has an incredible IP portfolio that they can not only monetize. They have certain games that they're doing for monetization, but then they have certain games that are things that are just for the case of being on the device and keeping a brand alive. So I think that, we look online and we obviously, we're all in the technology business, but there are a lot of things that are tying on and offline together. So I think that if you're looking for something like that, it's not necessarily, a black or a white issue. And then I'll speak for my own experience. There's a lot of old cool Nintendo games. Maybe I date myself. People know how old I am, but if I could find a way, if IP rights and everything could be assorted, I would definitely be willing to pay for some old great platform games like Contra and things like that if I could get them, in the right bundle or if it was packaged the right way, just for nostalgia.
Так, ребят, может быть, есть у кого-то вопросы? Хотелось бы, прочекать направление, в котором мы идем, что всем интересно.
Hello, my name is Alexander, up.ru. I want to ask more about Russian market, about why, as you know, the share of grossing of iPad. Can I in Russian? Will be short, quite short. Доля продаж, идущих на российском рынке с iPad намного больше, чем с iPhone. Там это является единственным рынком. Не могли бы наши аналитики объяснить этот тренд? Или может быть?
Okay, the question is that iPad revenues in Russia are much higher than the iPhone revenues. Can you explain that and also approximate these to the other countries?
I've seen that as well. Actually, I was looking at that, and if you guys are interested in the data, come see me afterwards. But Russia's actually was, I believe, in our latest month, number 4 in iPad.
Why?
For that, I would look to the developers, and I would actually ask people that are making the games and looking at that much more, because I'm in the business of kind of seeing the larger trends, and I can corroborate what you're seeing. As well as I think that, it comes down to, how much is a user spending, and perhaps users spend more in Russia on an iPad for whatever reason. Maybe it's wealthier people buying them, and then everybody can get an iPhone. I don't know if that's the case. I'm based in Beijing, and then there are other countries. The U.S., you don't see it in terms of revenue, but you do see that the United States is far and away the largest market in terms of iPad revenues. And so, that's something that's interesting. But as for the mechanics of that, I would look to the expert.
Okay, so as for the tablets, there is also a trend for the console gamers, for hardcore and mid-core gamers to come and exchange their consoles with a tablet gaming experience, and I think that's what driving more revenue to this field. And also, iPad games compared to iPhone games offer, on average, they offer more, more gameplay. You can devote more time when you just pick up your iPad. You sit on your sofa, so you can devote an hour or several hours to playing the game.
Session is much larger.
Yes. So yes, the session is much longer, and the revenue you get is just proportional to the length of the session. The game developer can find out a better way to engage the player, to make him more, to offer some more deep experience inside the game, and to find a way to monetize it better. And quite a few companies have stated that their strategy is iPad first. So they're trying to create the games that would fit better on iPad. And really, this device offers some things that can be achieved on iPhone. So it's better from user experience perspective, and some of the games just work much better on iPad and produce more revenue than iPhone.
Да, вот еще вопрос.
Gentlemen, my name is Alexander, and I wanted to ask, you've been talking about iOS and Android. How about Windows Phone? What's the position of this market now? What's the speed of its developing? I mean, is there any reason to develop games, for example, only for Windows Phone as a head start? It's quite easy using XNA. It's easy to sell the games right now. What do you think about that?
Well, I think first of all, and it's just my opinion, but I think all games should be deployed in all the platforms. I don't think that you should segment the development and the cost to only one platform, because if you don't find your audience, or for whatever reasons, I think games should be available to everyone cross-platform. So I wouldn't develop on Windows 8 and only, especially Windows, because I think it's still very niche and very limited market. We clearly see some tractions on Windows. I think it's because of from what I've read and what I've seen, it seems that it's quite easy to develop as well on Windows, maybe easier than it is on the other platform, and it's very flexible, and maybe some kind of legacy developers have experience with the Xbox Live and doing games that are for console and PC, so they feel confident with maybe going on Windows as well, because it's a platform that they know. So on the analytics side, we see a lot of developers using Flurry analytics for Windows more and more. Having said that, I think you remain very dependent on the success of the platform and the device, and the volume of the audience that is going to embrace the device and the operating system. So until it gets, it's still, I would say, limited for the moment, but it clearly shows some signs of like interesting traction.
Yeah, and if we talk about the the developer who doesn't have much money, much development resources, I think you should be quite picky with what platforms you start with. So I think you should take a look at the development tools that you have, that you're convenient with. And for example, if you're using Unity, of course, you'll be able to come to the different platforms with the shared code. You shouldn't spend much time on porting. But if you're more familiar with some, native development, I think that it would take just a lot of time for you to create a game on all the mobile platforms, and I think it would make sense to concentrate on the most, popular ones. And if the game does well, you can always create a version on other platforms.
And what do you think about new mobile platforms, for example, like NVIDIA Shield, and perspective of this market?
I would like to add to that question. What do you think about Kruglый and the platforms that are emerging now? Video game consoles based on Android, small ones. Are they going to hit it? What your prediction can be?
Taking off my AppAnnie hat, because I don't have data to back this up, this is all speculative. I think it's great in general, and I think this goes to the last question about Windows 8, that at the end of the day, we're not only creators, we're also consumers of all of this, and we all benefit from various touch points. And I think it's really exciting to see that we're seeing technology emerge. And I think that it's kind of showing what's going on from the gaming experience, and I think that a lot of people talk about this idea of a hardcore gamer who can only exist on, a PC that's completely tricked out, or, the latest Xbox and things like this. And I think that these new devices are kind of bringing that together. And as far as big data's perspective on it, we don't have it yet. A lot of people are asking. I get a lot of questions about it, and people are interested, but questions don't necessarily translate into success or revenue. I would say it's just a question that's on a lot of developers' minds. And again, I would pass this one off to the expert.
Yeah, I agree. And as more players are coming from consoles to mobile, I think that there will be a rising demand of, if we talk about the Project Shield, about this, controls with the feedback. Because if you look at the, for example, first-person shooters on a touch device, these virtual sticks are not doing great compared to the real, buttons or D-pad. So I think that there will be a niche for this kind of devices, and especially keeping in mind the fact that players from the traditional consoles who are used to this kind of controls will come to mobile and will miss this kind of experience. And just several years ago, the only method of controlling the mobile game was buttons. So there were no touch screens, and this was a convenient method. So then touch screens appeared, then appeared some accelerometer things, GPS, and now all these new features of the phones, a part of the gaming, and you see a lot of games popping out who use these new controls. And it's really interesting to see how the industry will introduce new features of the mobile devices. So Google Glass is coming, some other things are coming, and these new features will bring some fresh air in game ideas. You will see some new interesting stuff that is using these new methods to control the game.
So there's one, if I can add one thing to that, and I think it's Project Shield, I was reading about today. One thing that's interesting to me in kind of our line of business and looking at specific stores and their relative performance is that I think with some of these devices you might actually see that they kind of break away from this integration with one store only. I think it's the shield it will be with, NVIDIA store, as well as the Google Play Store, as well as Steam. And so I think that that's something that's interesting. It's not necessarily how successful will they be with this idea of creating that mindset.
Так, ребят, как вот лучше сделать? Уйти сейчас на перерыв или продолжить и пораньше закончить? Потому что у нас две части сейчас. Сидите еще?
Голосование.
Ну, высказывайте.
Ну, можно было бы сделать перерыв, просто как-то более чуть-чуть, чтобы вы программу сказали, о чем будет. Потому
Да,
что реально в «Заголи по заголях» есть еще просто темы, которые идут
Я
параллельно.
понял. Ну, смотрите, дальше о чем хотел с ребятами поговорить, хотел поговорить о маркетинге. То есть вытащить конкретные цифры, сколько игры зарабатывают там в топ-ЮС, в топ-России, сколько нужно денег на продвижение, можно ли продвинуть игру бесплатно, можно ли продвинуть за 50 тысяч и так далее.
Вопрос просто в том, что не то, что людям не интересно, просто, сидят гиганты мысли, и мы тут такие песчинки, мира, и нам рассказывают, да, можно сделать это, это понятно, это такое знаете, то есть это Библия, да? Можно какие-то такие конкретные маленькие шажочки для простых смертных, вот так скажем. То есть, все очень интересно, но, в общем, все это понимают, то, о чем говорят.
Так, на перерыв уходим?
Да, голосуем, перерыв.
Перерыв? Ну, давай.
Да, и можно еще попросить? Очень холодно, я не знаю, как вам, но...
So we have a 10 minutes break and coming back.
Is that what it was about? A 10-minute break? Gotta learn Russian.
So it's easier for single.
It's the same.
Like
The same argument for Amazon as well. It's bigger than the Windows market. There's a lot of competition.
yeah, that's why.
Well, I can say that I'm not in the business of saying yes, no, good or bad. I
Just your opinion.
I get a lot of questions about people saying, "Oh, you support it?" You guys sell intelligence. Now a lot of people coming in and saying, "I want to buy the data." So that being said, I totally understand why. But you also want to look at what is the adoption rate of the kid. I think it comes down to how much of it is, we'll see what happens next. The Xbox release is next month. We'll do a demo and talk about how things tie together. I think it'll be a lot better for them because
Sort of Arabic for it's a name. It's a name, but it's also cross-platform, so it can be enough on Android and etc. It's just about does it worth it to shoot a game in the Windows Store? It's the first step, because users on Windows Store don't really have much choice. So just if I see that people buy my game on Windows Store, does it really mean that I should?
I really don't know because I don't know if the people that are buying Windows Phone are representative of what you see in iOS and Android. And I think that usually the rule of thumb is go right to me. And instead of going, people will be there, take a look at it, and then go. So,
What's the role?
yeah, like I said, I think Microsoft is an absolutely great company. They've done well in many different lines of businesses. They've indicated that they're committed to this. Again, at this point, this is a gaming conference, so if you wish to gaming perspective, I think what's interesting about Jose some of the non-gaming applications and the idea that people are still using, I look for a startup kind of growing and we always have products. When I was working in finance, it was like this. It was all Windows. So I think that we'll see with the Xbox, when it integrates with Windows Phone, that gives it a lift. And as the market share continues to develop, but I don't know the profile of a Windows phone buyer right now. As to guide the decision.
It's better to investigate.
Come to our website and just keep track of the if you're reading this about totally different categories, top 50. You can do this for free on our website. Just look and provide all the ranking. And then see how it's distributed in different markets. And then if you think those are resonate, then go ahead. Again, I'm lucky. I don't have to make these difficult decisions. I just want to help people make better decisions. I can tell you the journalists I see, nobody writing nearly as much as you. So.
Yeah. So, yeah, but no, that corporation,
the exact same.
yeah, because we are just writing about not about Russian games, but about games itself. So we're trying to write all aspects.
And that's one of the things that before this year, I had never been to Russia under any of the CIS states.
White Night, Winter Night.
Yeah, I was at White Nights actually. I was at Winter Nights for February. I don't think I would be going to the event, but somebody from our team will be there. I will put you in touch. What I love about Russia. Infrastructure and a small market, but not a lot of money. And so you have this global perspective. It was actually going to we'll see well, this is a working colors that provides numbers in there. So I think it's important to know the numbers that we're talking about. I think you're talking about the challenge, right? Like what's happening in it's crazy that you see a lot of numbers and the massive every day. But they're not like I think that's what they're doing. get this.
Давай я буду.
Офигела. Я ебу, блин, может, ты со мной разговариваешь и потом ей скажешь. Просто ты поехала на час раньше, ты сказала. Фиг его знает. Ну, на час раньше ты поехала на час раньше. Ну, понятно. Я не знаю. Покурим? Да, покурим сегодня? Почему? Да. Не в семье завтра. Да, на склад.
Так, ну что, начинаем мы?
Это его осталось тебе. Чего? Чего? Нет, он на улице.
So let's talk about marketing a little. I'm always interested. If you take a free-to-play game, not paid game, there are two types of charts in iOS: top free and top grossing. And if we talk about organic traffic, what's bigger? What's more efficient in terms of downloads to be top free or to be top grossing?
Well, if you say in terms of downloads,
Yeah.
then the answer is unequivocally free. You know, a lot of the games that are grossing, if you look at Puzzle and Dragons, and if you look at Clash of Clans, if you look at where they correspond, you know, if you were to plot them on an axis, you would see that the games that are doing the highest in grossing very rarely are the top of the charts in downloads. And I think that the reason for that is, you know, quite straightforward. It's just they're getting less people, but they're just doing a better job of monetizing those users. And I think that the distribution might change on that. It might be that all of those users have a higher ARPU, or it might be that, you know, they just do a better job of getting a segment of those to have a really high ARPU. So, and with regards to your question on download efficiency, then it's very clear. There are, you know, if you look at they're all in-app purchase games, and very, very rarely are they in the top 10. You guys can check our AppAnnie index. We release this information for free every month, where you can kind of see what are the top 10 games globally for games and non-games. And you'll see that the lists are very different when you look at top revenue and top downloads.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's completely right. What we see is that the top three, I mean, you see much more rotation in the top three than you see in the top grossing, just because developers are paying for burst campaign to reach the top chart. So they are going to pay, I don't know, it seems that these days you need at least 100,000 or 120,000, like on average, or maybe more than that, downloads in a day to be able to reach top charts. So with that figure in mind, and considering the cost the acquisition cost for one user, it might cost you at least $100,000 a day to be able to reach top charts. So it costs a lot of money. So publishers are using different type of mechanics to drive users to the charts through, the likes of AppAnnie that was really well done recently, but then or through CPI basis or cost per video basis or through PR activities and so on. But having that kind of figure in mind, it seems that there are clearly much more rotation because you see publishers going in the top 3 for like 1, 2, 3 days, and then they disappear down the charts. But the top grossing always remain the same ones. These days it's much more structured. So you have 2 Kabam games, you have Candy Crush, you have 2 EA titles, and then the guys in the top 10 are kind of remain now the same. It's very much consolidated, and it was a few months ago. So. The top grossing one, and to come back to your point, what's important for you is not to spread your money and then drive like thousands and thousands of installs. What's important for you is like find the right audience and find your whales, the ones that are going to spend time and money in your game. And once you understand your audience, you know who are the ones paying, how long do they spend in game, and who they are, what type of profile, where they're located, what's the average age range. Then you start segmenting your audience, and you use different type of acquisition mechanics based on like the geography, based on the location or based on the age, and you target very specific instead of like kind of spreading.
So are you saying that the times of the burst campaigns are actually fading away?
Well, I think, yeah. The way the algorithm on iOS is set up, the fact that it still works, but they are trying to now block also some alternative like app boosters, such as AppAnnie, or we'll see what. No, App gratis, sorry. Some of those like 3 app a day and stuff are still there. We'll see what happens, but I think driving and using kind of. And we know that the rewarded CPI basis now is kind of getting less tractions on iOS clearly, and it was banned by Apple a few years ago. I think it was last year, but on Android, I think and I clearly see less traffic as well on the CPI basis, rewarded CPI basis. So I think the market is getting more mature, and the publishers are getting better in like understanding their audience. So they want to avoid like spreading that money and having a really low retention. So it's not a question for you of like driving 100,000 users and then tomorrow having 5,000 active ones. What's important is like getting less of them but getting the right ones. So I think the time of like pure app, CPI and spreading and like boosting all kind of somehow done.
And on that, I think the aspect of social plays into it as well. You're seeing, if you look at the market over the last year and a half, the number of games that truly have incorporated social aspects to them is much more now than it was a long time ago. And I remember talking with friends who were at very large companies known for gaming, who will remain nameless, but basically them saying that they were frustrated because they couldn't figure out this social aspect. Facebook made it very easy, and then with mobile it was kind of something that you needed to figure out as you went along. And to go back to the regional market hypothesis, in South Korea, working with Kakao has proven to be very successful. In Japan, Line has had a lot of success with kind of using that. If you look at Candy Crush Saga, actually they're a perfect example of kind of, growth that was fueled by social, their integration with Facebook, as well as with their mobile strategy. And they're also one of these games that's actually very different, because if you look at Puzzle and Dragons, they've been at the top of the chart for Japan. I forget the exact starting date when they went to number 1, but if not already a year, very close to a year. And if you look at Clash of Clans, they were number 1 for an extraordinarily large period of time in a lot of countries, and still are. Candy Crush Saga. If you look at this, I encourage you again, go look at our site and see the free products that have the charts of this. Without the numbers, they've gone up. They've had steady growth, and so I think that kind of looking at things that incorporate and encourage app discovery, not necessarily through an app, which does not seem to be the best business in some ways, but mechanics that get people to want to play with their friends or share with their friends and get their friends to download it. I think that can help quite a bit. I'd be interested in hearing kind of what Zeptolab's strategy is on this as well.
I agree about the social aspects, and we see how these things are really driving users to new games and how they're affecting in a good way the retention of the players and how you can find a new way to play the games. And it's really interesting to see what new mechanics can be built around social interaction. And still, I think that one of the niches that is not yet filled on the mobile is some, synchronous multiplayer, some real-time turn-based multiplayer. So when you look at the top grossing charts, most of the games use asynchronous multiplayer. So there are a lot of games that allows you to make something, then just to quit your app, and your friends can go to the game and find out what you have done, make their move, and that's it. This scheme works very well for mobile devices, but I think that there is still a lot of interesting ways for another type of interaction, and that includes the thing we can call local multiplayer, when you just sit with your friends in a room and you can just while you interact with them in the game, you can also interact in a real life. So you can express your emotions, you can make some advices and all that stuff. So I think that all this multiplayer thing is going to evolve, and we will see some interesting things that can be done in this field.
Yeah, just a quick thing. I mean, it's not a surprise if the latest Zynga game is called Running with Friends. I mean, if you have a lot of endless running games on the market, and I mean they differentiate each other with maybe the background and the look and feel of the characters, but at the end of the day, the mechanic remains the same somehow. But then by calling a game Running with Friends, there is clearly an attraction. It's like competing with your friends, which one is going to do the best score, which one is, and they did exactly the same with Candy Crush, when by reaching a certain level, you can always see which level your friends are, if they are below you or if they are above you. So then there is always that kind of endless chase between you and your friends, and then not only you are blocked in time, and the way they monetize that is not only they frustrate you by the time, so every 20 minutes, you have a new gameplay sequence, but also they are offering you different boosters and mechanics to just be able to add that last or remove that last candy that just is blocking you for 5 days to pass the level. So they are very smart in the way they're approaching their strategy and monetization, and by having this social aspect mixed with a kind of very in-depth monetization solutions, you kind of drive significant revenue, I think.
Yeah, it's good to beat a stranger, but it's better to beat your friend.
Exactly.
But I'm going to talk personal experience here and not, from an industry perspective. One of the coolest games that I've played was a game called High Noon, which had a lot of success in 2011 on iOS. And you could kind of do a Western shootout, and it was real time. It was exactly what you're talking about. And there aren't a lot of games that have that feel to it. I was recently playing it with somebody in my office, and we stood and we did exactly what you're talking about, this kind of emotional connection where 50 paces, and yeah, it's all on your screen, but people in our office were watching it, and you get people involved. And I think that also goes to what we were talking about, discovery, and people getting to see it. When everybody in the office sees this, then they can kind of see that. Another game that I've been playing a lot is the new Marvel game. I forget the exact publisher, the Warner Brothers. It's kind of it's a combination of card game / fighter, like Street Fighter 2. Yes, Injustice. I kept wanting to say Invincible, but I knew that wasn't it. That's a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying that game a lot. The number one thing that I'm thinking to myself right now, though, is I wish that I could play somebody. It was introduced to me by a colleague, and I really want to fight him in that game and go head to head. So I think that I get really excited about this. And when we talk about these consoles, I think that's another aspect. If we can have these kinds of games and actually do this over a network, whether it be local LAN or whether it be over distributed networks, it doesn't really matter. But doing it together can be fun. When you see somebody, you beat them, just like we've always seen on Xbox and these things. And then also being able to do it really, in real time. If I'm in Beijing and, you know, my friend is traveling for work, we could still get a quick game of, you know, even Pong would be great if you could do that, you know, real time. So I think that's a really exciting front in the mobile world. So I look very much forward to you and everybody in the audience kind of keeping us entertained with what you're working on.
Right, but let's say you are in a top 3 US market for, let's say, iPad, and it took you, just an example, 50,000 installs to get there. And what's the organic value from this position? So how many installs would you get back if you drew in 50,000? How many are getting back? Like new installs from organic?
For us, it's very hard to say exactly how that is. We're looking at various ways. I think that kind of like everything, it comes down to the fold. And if you're above the fold, you'll see it in terms of an exact number. I think it depends upon where you are in the curve. And there are a variety of ways that our partners are looking at it. And I can also say there's not one specific answer. So I think that people want to get there. And, you know, the strategy of doing one day of the burst marketing, I don't necessarily know if it's done, because I think some people believe that it does work. And it depends upon the business model. But then I think you also look at, you know, with ad networks and all these other things, what is the quality of the user? One of the things that I think a lot of people are figuring out and are trying to figure out is what are the metrics to do that? Because it's not super easy to kind of trace the quality of the users that you're getting from different sources. So even if you do get 50,000 users, again, if the contest is users, it's easy to say. If the contest is what's the revenue, it's very difficult to say what is the revenue for that unless you have the systems in place. And that's not necessarily about, you know, oh, I got to number 5 from number 10, and I got this many more users organically. It's very hard still to track what that impact is on your bottom line. I don't know, are you guys looking at ways, I'll ask you, are you guys looking at ways of kind of tracking this organic growth lift, or?
Yeah, so it's really too hard to tell any exact numbers. What I can tell from just overall experience is that the best marketing that we've seen so far is the word of mouth. So when the game is, you know, hard, it's up in the charts and you made an initial push, then it will actually depend on the quality of the game. So if the game is good enough to capture user attention, is it good enough for you to recommend this game to your friends? For example, if you come to, you know, some party and others come and take a look at what are you playing at, and you say, hey, well, this game is quite well, but well, I finished it in 5 minutes. Don't play it. This is one situation. Another situation that you will just say that this game is great and everyone should install it, and maybe if there's some social interaction involved, this will also influence this word of marketing the game. And I think that once the game is high in the charts, this is a major thing that will make the game successful or not.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree more. I think the best tool for you to like acquire quality user is word of mouth and burst, because there is no better tool than when your friend is telling you, oh, I've been playing that game, it's absolutely amazing. Then you are very likely to go and download the game and play it and maybe compete with that friend that recommended you the game. So I think it's a great product. And to come back to my point about like making kind of boosting campaign and stuff. They are also, what I mean by the fact that I think they are done somehow is the fact that they are getting really expensive as well, because we see that the cost to acquire a user on a per user basis, it can be above, $1, $2, $3. So when you need 100,000 installs, then it can cost you a fortune actually to get top charts. So and very few publishers, except the very big guys, can really afford it. So I think it's really hard, and it's also a reason why Flurry, when just to give you some some background. But when Apple has decided to remove like incentivize the install, we came up with the video product, and we think that it's a great substitute because I think it's a great delivery product. So not only on the monetization side, but on the user acquisition side, when you show your users a 15 to 30 seconds trailer with some great gameplay and like music and like kind of image of the game, they are more likely to get a better understanding of what the game looks like, and then they are more likely to then download the game, because on the App Store you see short descriptions and few screenshots, but when you can see like gameplay sequences, I think it's much better for you in terms of like getting a clear idea of like how the games looks like, and you have, I think, kind of better expectations on.
And that's similar, I think, to what you see on PC and consoles as well, right? Like, I mean, it's not exciting to see a screenshot from a game. It's exciting to see the trailer that they release at E3 or GDC. I think that it's tangible. And then again, from personal experience, I very rarely, unless I'm doing analysis, like download a game just because it's at the top of the charts. You know, if I'm writing about it internally or things like this, I will do it. But most of the games that I play very frequently are because, you know, one or two people who I trust are like, hey, this game's really good. And then I wind up, you know, downloading it. And I think, again, you have that built-in network effect because, you know, they're on the game and you have a competitive thing, but you also have the opinion of somebody who you really trust.
And I can also share our experience with, extending our game story in the way of the cartoons. So for our latest game, Cut the Road Time Travel, and for our previous games, we created, a series of short cartoons, about a minute each, and we saw a great feedback from the users about this, and this seemed to have a great influence on their involvement in the game, and about how the word about the game is spread. So we are able to show some, our characters, some things that are happening in the game to the YouTube audience, and this can also drive some new, fresh user base to our game. And from the other side, we also bring more content inside the game. So we, for example, in time travel, we linked every season, every game package with some, movie, some cartoon, and this way the user gets, more involvement in the story of the game. He can then send and share this video to his friends. And we're doing the same thing in our Facebook group, and this, using of short videos to help engage the players and promote the game works quite well for us.
And coming back to Cut the Rope, since Cut the Rope has been a long-time resident of top paid charts, can you share the info on what's the difference in being, let's say, position number 7 in the United States in 2011 or even earlier, 2012 and 2013? Is there a decrease or increase, or nothing has changed from being in the number 7 or number 3?
I can't tell the exact numbers because I just don't remember them. But I think that the paid charts are not rising that quick like we see top grossing, and probably guys would tell more about that.
I mean, if you look at downloads and revenue percentages, as I mentioned earlier, the percentage that paid apps are getting has actually decreased just because the freemium model has gotten so big. That being said, it's not smaller than it was beforehand. And I think, that there's this idea, and it'll be interesting if you get to a point where people are willing to spend $40 on a game, because that might change. If they knew what the experience would be, and there was a reputation like you have on consoles with a lot of these AAA franchises that have developed, you kind of know what to get. And so there's a backlash if you don't get it. for some of these games. So if we get to a point where the technology and the game experience justifies, an expenditure like that, then you might see that getting higher. I think that it might also be the case that with mobile that it develops in a way where you don't get there because people do become accustomed to the free-to-play model. And it will be interesting. I think that that's a question that's on a lot of developers' mind, probably the largest developers who are kind of looking at allocating resources between console and mobile and trying to figure out that balance. I personally think and hope that there will always be a market for these, games that are blockbusters. They're fun to play, and I don't necessarily know that you can continue getting those if you don't have, a dedicated source to it. But yeah, so I think that it will depend.
Okay. And so you're talking about the acquisition costs, and acquisition costs are high. It can go to $3. What are things going to happen in the next year or the next 2 years? Is there a limit, or will we see an install that costs $10, let's say?
Well, it will be interesting to see how the market on the CPI basis just evolves because, as I said, I think on Android it's getting really complicated. I think what we will see is like kind of a much more non-rewarded sustainable solutions that are able to scale. Because obviously driving installs with a paid application is really hard. I mean, we get contacted by developer having a paid application, say, yeah, I want to buy install. But it's actually really hard to buy install for a paid game. So for freemium titles, actually, like if we can manage to offer like proper but targeted, non-rewarded formats, I think, yeah, that's the way I see the future. And again, coming back to my point about the video, but we see that, I mean, video for us is a key focus. And personally, and I think also company-wise, we think that the video has great future because it drives really quality traffic. We've been making some studies, and the quality of the traffic in terms of retention through a video is actually better than an organic install. So we see kind of like a lot of traction from that video segment. We also are planning to release a real-time bidding platform for, non-rewarded, and obviously the chance that we have, just talking about Flurry, the fact that we have all these data and all these analytics, and we are able to kind of segment the audience and offer like kind of really targeted targeting to our advertisers. So tomorrow, when big brands will decide to kind of invade the mobile, they will decide to, target and spend money on a very targeting audience in terms of age and gender and personas. And so it's important for us to be able to work in advance and base all our user acquisition on the analytics and on the data. I think data is the future. Somehow, we will have to kind of structure in a much better way, especially when traditional brands will kind of start investing more and more in mobile.
And just to answer the question, this might be an argument in favor of paid apps, but if your cost per user is $10 and you're selling for $15, then it works out. It's simple, and I think that that's one of the caveats with the free or the freemium model is that it can be much harder to kind of do that. But if you look at it in not a mobile viewpoint, but you look at it in terms of any other product, cost per acquisition, is kind of marketing, right? And if marketing and all the other costs are less than what the revenue you have coming in is, it will continue to get done. So if people are spending $25 a game, whether that be freemium or whether that be paid or whether that be, ad revenue that's coming in, and you can get them for $5, then I'll do that any day of the week. If they're bringing in 100 and it's a $25 cost, I'll still do it. But if it's a 30-cent cost of acquisition and they're only bringing in 15 cents, I'm going to stay away from that. So, I think as long as the market supports it and as long as, companies are making a profit, because at the end of the day, that's what sustains a business, then they can go to whatever level they want if people are making money.
Yep.
On the other side, what we see from the very beginning of, for example, of when the App Store appeared, is that the price of the paid apps is diminishing. So the amount of content you get for $1 is rising. So the competitiveness leads to the thing that the price drops down, 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 and down. So nowadays, it just you have to think very hard if you want to price your paid app more than 99 cents. So that thing makes it even more harder now to promote your paid app using user acquisition.
I want to ask one thing. Is there a room for games that cost like $10, like The World Ends With You? Great game. I suppose they earned a lot, but it was already an established game, and many of my friends bought it just because they didn't have a 3DS, which is not very popular in Russia, but heard a lot. Is there a room for that games appearing out of nowhere, just a game that costs $10, which is great enough to justify the price? Can it happen?
I think that the main reason for publishers to raise the price more than 99 cents to charge $5 or more dollars for it is because of either or established brand that is known on other platforms, and you know that a lot of people love it, and you're able to do it. Or if you are producing something, breakthrough, some great technology, some great things that has never been before. For example, Infinity Blade, when it appeared, it was just a great showcase of what is possible on the new iPhone. So I think that in other cases, you should think carefully about pricing your app more than 99 cents.
And another example that I think fits the same is Minecraft. Everybody knew it from PC. I think another potential would be what about the shareware model that I think a lot of people in this room remember, where you give a demo or you give a slice, and then you say this is what this game can be, pay for this. I definitely think it's possible, and I think that there are certain people that want that kind of a game more than others. The question will be, are people providing that experience? I don't think that it's necessarily, the game drives it, a price drives it. I think that it really depends upon what's being sold. I don't want to spend $1 for a Coca-Cola, but on a hot day, when there's nothing around for 5 miles, I'll pay $4. So I think that you really look at, again, and I think that what's kind of been consistent among the three of us has been know your market and know what they want. And if you're creating a market, that can be very, very difficult. But I think that there's room for a lot of different things with all the different types of content distribution we have. I don't think that paid applications are going away. I don't think that freemium applications are going away. But I think that it's going to be a question of, as Guillaume was saying, what is your audience doing? Is it that you look at this segment and this type of a strategy resonates with them, whereas this segment, it totally falls flat?
All right.
Just to give you just an example, the last game I acquired on my iPad is Football Manager, and I'm a big football fan, and I used to play Football Manager on PC, and the only way for me to get it was I paid $6.99, and I paid $6.99. But if the game had cost like $8.99 or $9.99, I would have bought it as well because it's my only choice. But again, we are talking about really established brands. So as you were mentioning, paid games at like 10 or 15, like all the Final Fantasy franchise, it's exactly the same. Square Enix they know that they have a set of established brands there, and if you want to play Final Fantasy on your iPad with great graphics, you pay £10, and that's the only way to do it. You have no other choice. So having said that, for I think new entries, it's much harder because obviously you are not established, no one knows you. So if there is no way for a user to at least pre-test your game, as you do on Xbox Live or on PlayStation networks, you before paying $70 or €70, you download the demo, you play the game. If you really like the demo, it's just like you might be more convinced and then acquire the game because you don't want to pay $70 and then have a 4 hours experience, which is the case sometimes. But So obviously.
I'm sorry. If I may follow up this question, is a light version model working? It's basically the same old shareware thing. Is it working?
Well, I think
right now?
well, yeah, I think it's more for. Well, we are not developers, so it's hard to tell. But well, I guess in some cases, yeah. I mean, having a light or a demo, and then in order to. Well, I guess yeah, it's more for you guys.
Yeah. I think this model is still working, but things are getting more and more complicated in the app stores, because if you take a look at the App Store, for example, 2 or 3 years ago, there were much more light free versions of different kind of games. And nowadays, as competitors have grown, you can see that there's a lot of full games that are given out for free. So this way, now if you create a free or light version of your game, it will compete with many games that are given for free, and they're full games. So it's kind of trickier now, but there is still room for such versions.
Так, давайте еще вопрос, у нас минус 15 осталось. Вопросы?
Много хороших вопросов со стороны гейминг сайта комментаторов. Кстати, кто ответить на все эти вопросы? В том числе цифры.
So they say that there were a lot of questions from gaming side and not a lot of answers. Could you possibly answer those? Maybe not now because we can't go over it again. But actually, I will explain that you didn't have data and you couldn't gather the data. I'll just explain this in Russian. В общем, мы на перерыве поговорили о том, что аналитикам нужно время, чтобы собрать информацию. Вот. И, может быть, сейчас, когда эти вопросы есть, мы в каком-то формате, пусть они ответят и напишут там в своем блоге. Вот о чем я предлагаю их попросить. Потому что я об этом столе узнал там 3 часа назад, а ребятам вопросов заранее не давали, поэтому все было вживую. So what we think is, could I send you the questions that I had, and you could gather some data and come up with the answers, maybe on your blog, or maybe just email me?
Yeah, I mean, again, we've been discussing that together. We are 2 data-driven companies, and obviously we can't really disclose any proper data for any specific publisher as well. So it's hard. But I mean, depending on the questions, I mean, what was the type of like kind of proper figures that were needed?
I think if you send us a question, kind of check with prospective people. I don't want to go on the record as committed to something, but I will go on the record as saying I'll look into whatever I can, and obviously we want to give as much as we can give.
В общем, постараются ответить. Еще вопросы есть? Насущные, живые. Что волнует больше всего? То есть вас успокоили, мне кажется,
есть
да?
Вопрос, который я не успел задать в перерыве до конца. Существует ли правило большого пальца? Может быть, оно, скорее всего, не существует.
Правило буравчика?
Правило буравчика, да.
Существует.
Для определения того, что игра все-таки платная или бесплатная.
Но у нас совершенно точно существует правило. Я не знаю, почему у кого-то не существует. Ну, то есть есть жанры, которые нельзя делать во free-to-play. Ну, то есть это вот все вот эти разговоры о том, что посмотрите на тех, посмотрите на этих, а сколько было таких же, которые ничего не получили. То есть все примеры, которые сейчас говорились, это все-таки хиты. То есть если вы можете сделать хит, вам вообще не нужно никого слушать. Вам нужно просто сделать хит. Но если есть мысль построить бизнес и понимание, что хит — это очень сложно, да, и компании, которые делают хиты, ну, вы их все знаете, сколько хитов у них потом. То есть даже люди, которые сделали хит, не факт, что они его сделают еще раз, что-то подобное. Вот, поэтому с точки зрения бизнеса, ну, как бы лучше выбирать жанры, в которых можно заработать изначально. Вот, поэтому мы в Game Insight всегда открыто говорим, то есть нам приносят что-то, мы говорим, это не заработает, вот потому-то, а это может, давайте поможем. Так, ну все, значит, вопросов нет. Окей, thanks guys a lot.
Thank you guys for coming. If you guys have any questions, I'm sure that you can find any of us for at least 5 minutes afterwards.